For nearly 3 decades, the world believed Selena Quintanilla's story was tragically complete. The crime was solved, the culprit named, and the case seemingly closed. But what if that closure was never real? A long, silent voice has finally come forward, and newly uncovered details are forcing a deeper look at what led up to that day. Loyalty, fear, control, and warnings that may have been ignored are now impossible to overlook. Familiar faces are reappearing, and the timeline no longer fits as neatly as it once did. This isn't about stirring controversy. It's about facing a truth that's far more unsettling than the story fans were told. Because what happened behind that motel room door may change how Selena's final chapter is truly understood. For nearly 3 decades, Chris Perez, the widower of Selena Quintanilla, kept his deepest memories private. In a rare 2025 interview connected to a new docuseries, he finally chose to speak, sharing emotional details he had never revealed publicly. Perez described their marriage not as a fairy tale, but as a refuge shaped by love, pressure, and quiet struggle. He explained that he stayed silent for years out of respect for Selena's legacy and her family's control over her story. But time changed that. Some things need to be said, he noted, not to rewrite history, but to understand what was happening behind the scenes. He revealed that in the months before her death, Selena was under immense strain. Her fame was exploding, and so were the demands from her label, her business, and especially her father, Abraham. Perez recalled late nights when Selena confided in him, worn down by expectations yet determined to keep going. She questioned whether she was still living for herself or simply meeting everyone else's needs. Perhaps most striking were Perez's references to private letters and journal entries Selena had written. Discovered years later, they revealed her desire for more creative freedom and her growing doubts about people she felt obligated to trust. She even wrote about wanting a quieter life, away from the spotlight. Without naming names, Perez acknowledged that warning signs may have been ignored. A father's control. From the earliest days of Selena Quintanilla's career, her father, Abraham Quintanilla, held firm control over nearly every major decision. A former musician himself, he recognized Selena's talent early and devoted his life to shaping her rise. As manager of Selena y Los Dinos, he oversaw performances, recordings, and the overall direction of her career. While Selena dreamed of crossing over into English-language pop, Abraham pushed her to stay focused on Tejano music, believing it honored their roots and protected the fan base that had built her success. Even as industry interest in a crossover grew, he often delayed those opportunities, insisting the timing wasn't right. His authority extended beyond music into Selena's personal life. When Chris Perez joined the band and began a relationship with her, Abraham saw him as a threat. He reacted harshly, firing Chris and forcing Selena to choose between her relationship and the family business. Even after eventually accepting their marriage, Abraham's control over her career never truly eased. In early 1995, Abraham again took charge when concerns surfaced about Yolanda Saldivar. After reports of missing funds and troubling behavior, he personally investigated and confronted Yolanda alongside Selena and Suzette. Though Yolanda was removed, Selena's continued contact with her, mainly to recover documents, highlighted the limits of Abraham's authority and raised questions about how much control Selena truly had over her own life. Today, Abraham remains deeply connected to Selena's legacy, overseeing her music, image, and brand through family-run companies. Critics argue that this tight control lacks transparency and often avoids uncomfortable truths. As a result, the version of Selena the public sees is still shaped by Abraham's perspective. A love story in secret. Selena Quintanilla and Chris Perez's relationship didn't begin in the spotlight, but in the quiet moments between rehearsals and long road trips. When Chris joined Selena y Los Dinos in 1989, their connection grew naturally and quietly. Selena knew that any romance, especially with a rock guitarist her father disapproved of, would spark conflict. What started as flirtation quickly became something deeper. Afraid of Abraham Quintanilla's reaction, they kept their relationship hidden from everyone, even as they toured and worked side by side. The secrecy took an emotional toll, forcing them to live double lives, publicly just bandmates, privately deeply in love. By 1992, the pressure became unbearable. Wanting control over her own life, Selena made a bold decision. She and Chris eloped. It was a choice driven by love, fear, and exhaustion. Their courthouse wedding was intimate but tense, filled with joy and uncertainty about what would come next. Abraham was furious when he found out, though he eventually accepted the marriage. Even after the truth came out, the strain lingered. Band dynamics were tense, privacy was rare, and the constant pressure of fame made building a normal marriage difficult. Chris later admitted they argued, not from lack of love, but from sheer emotional fatigue. Still, he always described their bond as real and powerful. Despite secrecy, family tension, and the weight of public life, theirs was a love that endured, one cut short but never diminished. The rise of Yolanda Saldivar. Yolanda Saldivar entered Selena Quintanilla's world as a devoted fan, but her involvement quickly grew into something far more troubling. In 1991, the San Antonio nurse approached Selena's father, Abraham Quintanilla, with a proposal to start an official fan club. Wanting to strengthen Selena's connection with her audience, he approved, unaware of the consequences. Yolanda proved eager and relentless. Within months, she was running the fan club and becoming a constant presence at concerts, events, and even family gatherings. Her enthusiasm seemed sincere, if a bit intense, and that intensity was mistaken for loyalty. It earned her trust. Before long, Yolanda's role expanded. She was placed in charge of Selena's boutiques, Selena etc., and given control over finances, payroll, and confidential records, often with little oversight. Selena, known for her kindness, viewed Yolanda as more than an employee. She saw her as a friend, but access soon turned into control. Employees began reporting missed payments, strange expenses, and unsettling behavior. Some described Yolanda as manipulative, divisive, and emotionally volatile. Designer Martin Gomez later recalled her as deceptive and controlling, capable of inventing stories to intimidate others. Still, concerns were brushed aside. Selena reportedly believed Yolanda was simply overwhelmed, not dishonest. By the time the family confronted her in early 1995 over financial misconduct, the damage was already done. Yolanda had accumulated power no one realized, and the trust placed in her would prove devastating. Financial red flags ignored. In the months before Selena Quintanilla's death, serious warning signs were already surfacing inside her growing business empire. Employees at her Selena etc. boutiques in Corpus Christi and San Antonio began reporting troubling issues tied to Yolanda Saldivar, the manager entrusted with running both locations. Staff complained of missed paychecks, questionable accounting, and increasingly erratic behavior. Some said they felt intimidated when they questioned Yolanda's decisions. Yet action was slow. Yolanda's close relationship with the Quintanilla family and her image as Selena's most devoted supporter protected her from the scrutiny another manager would have faced. That hesitation would prove costly. Selena's personal trust in Yolanda complicated everything. By 1995, Yolanda wasn't just an employee. She was one of Selena's closest confidants. Selena worried that removing her abruptly could damage the fan club, disrupt the brand, and create unwanted scandal at a critical moment in her career. Believing the problem could be handled quietly, she chose patience over confrontation. On March 9, 1995, Selena, Her father, Abraham, and her sister, Suzette, finally confronted Yolanda with evidence of financial irregularities and missing documents. Yolanda denied any wrongdoing, even as discrepancies became impossible to ignore. Abraham immediately ordered her removed from all business operations. Selena, visibly shaken, agreed. But crucial financial records were still in Yolanda's possession. Against her family's wishes, Selena arranged one final meeting with Yolanda at a Days Inn motel on March 31, 1995, hoping to recover those documents and close the chapter peacefully. She believed Yolanda wouldn't hurt her. That trust, and Selena's sense of responsibility to protect her business and reputation, led her to go alone. It was a decision made with good intentions and fatal consequences. The warning signs had been there, but Selena chose faith over fear. The impact of that moment didn't end that day. It would echo for decades, resurfacing in ongoing questions about accountability, silence, and justice. Justice upheld or public pressure? In March 2025, nearly 3 decades after Selena Quintanilla's death, Yolanda Saldivar became eligible for parole, reopening one of the most painful chapters in Latin music history. The news sparked an immediate and emotional backlash, raising a difficult question. Does justice ever expire? Saldivar, convicted in 1995 of first-degree murder, has long claimed the shooting was accidental. But the possibility of her release ignited outrage among fans who viewed the crime as deliberate and unforgivable. Social media, news outlets, and community forums quickly filled with debate. Some defending the legal process, others insisting the gravity of the crime demanded permanent imprisonment. On March 27, 2025, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles denied Saldivar's request. In its statement, the board cited the brutality of the crime and concluded she still posed a public safety risk. They pointed to evidence of premeditation, luring Selena to a motel under false pretenses and shooting her as she tried to escape, as proof of intent and disregard for human life. The decision brought relief to many. Fans mobilized in the weeks leading up to the ruling, signing petitions, holding vigils in Corpus Christi and Los Angeles, and amplifying hashtags like #JusticeForSelena and #DenyParole. For them, the denial wasn't about vengeance, it was about protecting a legacy and honoring a life taken too soon. Selena's family also responded. Chris Perez said the ruling didn't erase the pain, but affirmed that Selena's life mattered. Abraham and Suzette Quintanilla thanked supporters, saying justice had once again prevailed. The parole denial offered a measure of closure, bittersweet but resolute, reaffirming Selena's enduring legacy and the accountability tied to her loss. Yolanda's shifting narrative. In the years since her conviction, Yolanda Saldivar has largely stayed silent. But ahead of her 2025 parole eligibility, she gave new interviews that reignited outrage, largely because she changed her account of what happened in the Days Inn motel room on March 31, 1995. Departing from her original claim that the shooting was accidental, Saldivar now suggested Selena was confrontational and that she acted out of fear and confusion. This reframing implied that Selena somehow provoked the tragedy, an interpretation widely rejected by eyewitness testimony and forensic evidence. Legal experts quickly flagged the problem. Parole decisions hinge not only on the crime, but on accountability and remorse. By shifting blame, Saldivar undermined her own credibility. Analysts noted that this lack of full responsibility likely weighed heavily in the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles' decision to deny her release. As one commentator put it, revising history to soften one's role raises serious doubts about rehabilitation. The backlash was swift. Selena's family, especially her sister Suzette, condemned the claims as an insult to her memory. Widower Chris Perez called the interviews a desperate revision of the truth. Fans echoed that sentiment online, viewing the timing, just before the parole hearing, as a calculated bid for sympathy rather than genuine reflection. Criminal psychologists added that the pattern fits long-standing concerns about manipulation, a continued need to control the narrative rather than confront the harm done. The fight over Selena's legacy. In recent years, Selena Quintanilla's story has returned to the spotlight, but not without controversy. A new wave of true crime documentaries and dramatizations has reignited debate, especially when these projects focus heavily on her slayer, Yolanda Saldivar, rather than on Selena herself. Several high-profile productions on major platforms have explored Saldivar's background and motives under the banner of balance. Critics argue this approach risks shifting sympathy toward the perpetrator and away from the victim. For many fans, especially within the Latino community, these portrayals feel like a betrayal of Selena's legacy. Cultural commentators have been blunt. True crime storytelling often humanizes offenders for drama, while reducing victims to a tragic endpoint. In Selena's case, episodes that dwell on Saldivar's psychology or prison life have been labeled exploitative, overshadowing Selena's achievements as an artist, entrepreneur, and cultural icon. Tensions flared again after a Selena-related documentary premiered at Sundance in 2025 and was later acquired by Netflix. Though marketed as a tribute, critics noted its heavy emphasis on the crime and trial, and the inclusion of Saldivar's claims reopened emotional wounds for fans and the Quintanilla family alike, family versus critics, and the final room. The Quintanilla family, especially Selena's sister Suzette, has taken a firm position on who controls the singer's public image. When recent documentaries and dramatizations drew criticism, Suzette dismissed the backlash, insisting the family alone has the right to decide how Selena is portrayed. For them, guarding her legacy is an act of loyalty, even if it means tightly controlling how her story appears across media. That control runs through Q Productions, the family company that manages Selena's music, image, merchandise, and screen portrayals. Family-approved projects are chosen to reflect how they believe Selena should be remembered. Critics, however, argue these portrayals often smooth over uncomfortable truths, particularly family dynamics and the events leading up to her death, raising questions about where authenticity ends and commercial interest begins. The debate ultimately leads back to one place where no narrative can soften the facts: Room 158. On the morning of March 31, 1995, Selena arrived at a Days Inn in Corpus Christi to meet Yolanda Saldivar, who had been fired but still possessed crucial financial documents. According to records and witnesses, the meeting quickly escalated. At 11:48 a.m., a gunshot rang out. Moments later, Selena stumbled into the lobby, bleeding heavily and crying for help. Forensic evidence later challenged claims of an accidental shooting. The hollow-point bullet struck at a downward angle, severing a major artery and causing massive bleeding. Doctors concluded the wound was consistent with an intentional shot. Most damning of all were Selena's final words. She identified Yolanda Saldivar by name and pointed investigators to room 158 before collapsing. In those last moments, Selena did more than ask for help. She named her attacker, leaving no doubt about what happened behind that closed door.